Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on You're Not Too Small to Go Global, Exporting Opportunities for Your Business. I'm Bob Hogan, the webinar coordinator today and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. I'm going to be your host, and our presenter is Joe Raycraft. More on Joe in just a minute, but just first, some brief information on SCORE. If I could ask you to move the slide, please, Joe. SCORE is a nonprofit national partner of the SBA with over 10,000 volunteers across the country. And locally here at SCORE Fairfield County, we have over 100 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. SCORE offers three primary value-added services to small business owners. First of all, we offer free one-on-one counseling, and you can access that in person via video, telephone, or email, whatever works best for you. And to do that, you can use the yellow bit.ly link that you see on the screen, or you can go to our website and click on the Request a Mentor button that's on our website. Secondly, we offer a wide range of educational workshops and webinars like the one today, roughly about 100 throughout the year. And lastly, we offer extensive resources on our website, including a network of subject matter experts. Our next live webinar is next Friday, March 31st at noon. The topic is Connect More, Sell More Through the Neuroscience of Sales with Julie Anderson presenting. You can find specifics on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. If you're on our website, we also have a large number of recorded webinars that cover a wide range of business topics. You can view those at any time by clicking on demand webinars. Just some logistics about today's event. We've set aside time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. And if you have a question, you can type it in at any time using the Q&A button in the lower part of your screen. And Joe will take as many as we can up until the top of the hour. Our webinar will end at 1 o'clock to respect your time. The session is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be available on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org, within the next day or so. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Joe Raycraft. Joe works for the U.S. Small Business Administration as Export Finance Manager for the New England region and is part of the SBA's Office of International Trade. He joined the SBA in 2020 after more than 20 years working in commercial lending and international banking. As Export Finance Manager, Joe works to promote SBA export loans through direct outreach to partner lender banks, to small business exporters, and a variety of resource partners that support exporters. Joe brings more than 25 years of private sector business experience, including international roles in the areas of manufacturing, commercial finance, and banking. I'll now turn it over to Joe. Joe, it's all yours.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Bob. I appreciate it. And thanks everyone for attending today's presentation. You're not too small to go global. First, I want to thank all the SCORE advisors who might be in the audience today. Again, just for everything that you do to support small businesses during your work days. And then thanks to all the small businesses that are on part of the audience today, and congratulate them for your interest in expanding into global markets, or maybe you're already there and looking to learn more. So I'm with the SBA's Office of International Trade, and our office, the mission is really to increase the number of small business exporters and the volume of exports by small businesses. The Office of International Trade, we prioritize assistance to small business exporters through the delivery of 3 export loan programs that we deliver through our partner SBA banks. We'll hear more about those, but today we're really going to cover a number of topics, which is going to touch on the vast network of available exporter resources that are out there for small businesses. There's going to be, we'll talk about grant funding for exporters that can help them to reduce expenses related to finding overseas customers. And then last, it's going to be really the access to capital, whether it's export-specific financing or just general working capital that can help you to enter that global market. My contact information is included on the slide deck, so feel free to reach out anytime with any questions or to discuss a specific transaction that you might be working on. So I start with this slide. I think it's good. It just kind of puts things into perspective. It's a study that was done by the U.S. Export-Import Bank showing that nearly 42% of all exporters have fewer than 19 employees. And today I do have a couple of case studies that we'll go over, and those are really single member LLCs. So one person, and these companies are having great success in the export market. There's about 33 million small businesses in the US, and according to a new total addressable market study, the estimate is that there's about 1.6 million small business exporters. Next couple slides are just going to try to put things into perspective in terms of the market. This is kind of like, so why export? Some of you may have seen this slide. This is a common slide that the SBA utilizes. It just shows that, most of the consumers in the world live outside the US. And in fact, 70% of the world's purchasing power is outside of the US. We do find that the small business exporters are significant, and they represent 98% of exporters. Or I should say, the small businesses that do export, they tend to be more successful in general. They tend to grow faster. They're a little bit larger. They create more jobs. And what I always say is I think the jobs they create are a little bit more interesting because now you've got that kind of global flavor. And it's also a great way to diversify your customer base. So why don't more companies export? I think that's what this slide kind of begs that question. And really it comes down to, I think, three things. Companies don't really know where to start, or they just simply don't have time to focus on it. They're too busy managing their domestic market customers. They just don't have the time or bandwidth to focus on it. Second, a lot of companies think that the regulatory environment is just too complicated. And again, it comes down to time and resources. And then third is that difficulty in maybe finding appropriate financing that's necessary to export their products. This slide puts kind of Connecticut into perspective. And I know there may be some participants that are not in Connecticut outside, but I just wanted to kind of focus this on Connecticut. You can see we've got over 5,000 small business exporters, about 15 billion in export sales from Connecticut in 2022. And of that, nearly 45% was exported by small and medium-sized businesses. In terms of industries, I just put these here. These are, I found in some of the data. So no surprises here. Transportation equipment, that really captures aircraft and jet engines and all the associated aerospace parts and defense-related industry that we have. And then you see the other top sectors: machinery, fabricated metal parts. And in terms of export markets, these are the top 5. I highlight Canada only to remind people that is an export market. It's a close neighbor to us. A lot of times we don't think of it as an export market, but Canada is a large market, and definitely something for you to consider. We'll talk a little bit more later on about some of the other export resource partners, but if you're a company that's looking to identify specific markets for your products or services, or even identifying customers, the U.S. Commerce Department has some phenomenal services that are low cost and can really help you to, like I said, identify customers or identify specific countries that are most likely to accept your product. So we're going to back up a little bit here and talk about, just in general, how does SBA define an export? And this comes directly from our standard operating procedures. An export transaction is the production and payment associated with the sale of goods or services to a foreign buyer. So it's really, I want to focus on the sale of goods. That's easy, things that go into a box, or services. And services are a number of different things that don't necessarily go into a box. A lot of times they're sent electronically. those are eligible exports. A couple other things to highlight. Indirect exporting is another area that is eligible for SBA. What indirect exporting means is that maybe your company is providing a product or service and to another US customer, and that customer incorporates your product or service into their item that is ultimately exported. So again, this kind of ties into supply chain. For an easy example, here in Connecticut, you could look to the aerospace sector, and there's a lot of companies that are tied into Pratt & Whitney, General Electric, Raytheon, and if you're supplying components or parts to those kind of larger companies, we know that a significant portion of their products are exported. So by virtue of that relationship, you could qualify for an export loan. Licensed and military defense related exports, these are eligible under the SBA. There's no, nothing against that. Foreign military sales contracts, those are eligible for financing. And there's also no US content requirement. So if you're a distributor or wholesaler of products that maybe you import from overseas and you sell here in the domestic market, but then you also find an export market for those products, you're also eligible for the export program. No US content requirements, so you're fine. I used to work for a small manufacturer years ago. We did a lot of imports from Asia, and we developed a very significant international distribution channel. And again, we really didn't have 51% US content, but because we were exporting and we had a contract, we were selling to a foreign buyer, we were eligible for the SBA Export Working Capital programs. And then just in terms of a couple of restrictions, and this is something really your lender would do, or possibly working with your score advisor. It's prohibited to do business in certain countries. And we look at the Export-Import Bank's country limitation schedule. And there's 4 countries there: Cuba, Iran, North Korea, and Syria. Those are 4 countries where it's prohibited for a US company to do business. So if you receive a contract from a customer in one of these countries, it's probably not a good idea to pursue it. And then you also need, or your lender would look at the OFAC sanctioned parties list. And OFAC is the Office of Foreign Assets Control. There's a sanction list there. It lists individuals where you're really not, from a know your customer perspective, able to do business. So in terms of SBA, our role in commercial financing, we're not a direct lender. We make loans, or we provide guarantees to SBA member banks that provide loans to small businesses. So why do SBA lender banks rely on us? There's certain things that lenders can't finance on their own because of their own credit policies. So you'll see here, these are the 5 biggest reasons why lenders utilize the SBA loan for small businesses. Collateral shortfalls is very common. SBA is really, and in the lender banks, we're cash flow driven. So we're looking at the cash flow of the business, and we want to make sure that there's sufficient cash in order to repay any loan that the company's looking for. If there's a little bit of a collateral shortfall, we're okay with that. And that's where the lender will say, well, from our credit policy, we really need to have 1-to-1 collateral. But if it's like a lot of businesses, an asset light company, an SBA loan is a perfect solution. A couple other things like change of ownerships and business acquisitions. Typically riskier types of financing, lenders like to utilize an SBA guaranteed loan. Startups, new businesses, even franchises, those all qualify. Sometimes the financing need requires a longer maturity, and maybe your lender can only provide a 7 to 10 year term, but you really need a 20 or 25-year term. Those are situations where the bank will turn to SBA. Or situations where it's just outside of the lender's credit policy. Maybe it's an industry or management experience isn't, where they'd like it to be. Those are some other reasons why a lender might utilize an SBA guarantee. I'd like to, start things out too with, the general eligibility requirements for an SBA loan. The first one's a big one. Personal guarantees are required for all owners of 20% or more in the business. This can be a scary thing for small businesses, but it's really, no matter if you're able to get a conventional loan from a bank, you're probably still going to have to provide a personal guarantee. So it's not just an SBA rule. A lot of the conventional banking loans require the same personal guarantee. Again, I mentioned, kind of the focus on cash flow. So SBA is going to look, and the SBA lender is going to look for a debt service coverage that, of course, is greater than 1 times. We're going to take a first position on any collateral, any of the equipment or assets that are financed. Those are going to be first position in favor of the bank and SBA. It's got to be, reasonable equity in the business. So there's got to be some skin in the game by the small business. The fourth bullet is, or the fifth bullet, okay, businesses must be for profit and considered small by SBA size standards. SBA is focused on small businesses, but just in general, it's really to determine if you're eligible. It really comes down to looking at your specific industry NAICS code. And just in general, companies that have less than 300 to 500 employees tend to be eligible for SBA financing. So, we really touch on almost a middle market company that is still SBA eligible. And, given the uncertainty in the economy right now, we do see a lot of lenders relying more and more on an SBA guaranteed loan structure. Any borrower applicant, they must be located and primarily operate in the US, and any loan proceeds must be used for domestic operations. So we can't finance a piece of equipment that ends up in your subsidiary in France to produce goods. Everything that we finance has to be here in the US. It can be to support exports, but we're not taking collateral on overseas assets. Businesses are eligible if they're at least 51% US owned or by green card holders. And the other important one is the last bullet: no delinquencies on existing debt obligations with the US government, including federal student loans. That would be a reason why a lender would not be able to provide SBA supported financing. So this slide, now we're getting into the Office of International Trade and kind of the 3 things I talked about early on, what we deliver as part of the Office of International Trade at the SBA. First is really what I call, business intelligence or, export advising. There's a lot of export resources out there for small businesses to tap into. Like we talked about, sometimes companies just don't know where to turn for help. We can help. We can connect you with the export resource partner that's most relevant to your situation, whether it be the US Commerce Department, it could be an SBA related issue, or I'm sorry, an SBA trade policy person that can assist. So there's a number of ways we can connect you with experts. Second is grants that help you to reach international buyers. We'll talk a little bit more about our STEP grant program. And then third is financing to help grow your international sales. Here we'll talk about our 3 specific export loan programs. So on the business intelligence and export advising, again, this is something, if you've got kind of a specific question, or maybe you're dealing with a trade issue or some sort of a dispute, you can reach out. We've got a toll-free number, an email address. This is our fast track service, an international hotline, where you can reach out to trade policy folks that really can help direct you to, again, the relevant resource that can assist with your specific situation. Maybe you're having some market access issues, or maybe you want to learn more about a trade agreement and how your product or service fits into that from a tariff and duty perspective. So lots of ways that SBA can assist in making introductions to all the various partners. And that would include, beyond, like I said, US Commerce, but we could talk about the small business development centers, of course, SCORE, if there's need for some business planning, the Export-Import Bank, and even, the STEP grant program that we'll talk about here in a sec. So the STEP grant program is, it's managed by each state. Here in Connecticut, it's managed by the Department of Economic and Community Development, the DECD. And it provides reimbursable grants for eligible export-related costs. Here in Connecticut, a small business can obtain up to $10,000 a year to help offset some of these costs. The most popular use of a STEP grant is participation in an international trade show or a trade mission. By international trade show, it doesn't mean that it has to be overseas. It could be an international trade show here in the US, where you're able to meet with existing international customers, or where you can meet with potential customers. You can see from the list, there's various things: design of international marketing materials. Any of the US commerce services are eligible for reimbursement. Export-related training or education. Cost of product compliance is also a popular one. So, lots of activities that would be eligible for STEP grants. So if you are exporting, or you have a plan to export, I would encourage you to check out this program. When you have you can just click on the link here within the slide, and that will bring you to Connecticut's STEP grant program and application. And I also have the contact for Hiran Vernon, who is the director for the program here in Connecticut. So these are the 3 export loan programs we talked about earlier in terms of providing companies with access to financing. The Export Express loan is, I would say it's the loan that is ideal for smaller companies that have, just smaller financing needs. It has a maximum loan size of up to $500,000. You can see the average loan size for an Export Express is about $264,000. This is a very flexible program. It can be used for term loans or lines of credit. And we'll go into a little bit more detail in a later slide on this particular program. But after we talk about the export loans, we're going to also discuss a couple of other programs that are great for small businesses, like microlending, and also our Community Advantage program that might be relevant to your situation. The Export Working Capital Program is specific monitored lines of credit to support export orders. These are typically for more experienced exporters. The average loan size of an export working capital loan is about $2 million. And these are monitored on a monthly basis. They're either asset-based structure, meaning there's a monthly borrowing base that has to be delivered to the bank, or they could be transaction-based structured, which really means like a purchase order financing, where the financing is to provide funding against the contract that you have with an international buyer. And the third program is international trade loan. And that's, like export working capital, it has a maximum loan size of up to $5 million. Average loan size is about $2 million. So this is really a term loan structure, just term financing, whether it be a 5, 7, 10, 25 years for real estate. It can be used for acquisition of capital assets and equipment, permanent working capital. We can also use it for business acquisitions. One of the requirements of this program is that an export business plan has to be part of the application process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that because I know with the SCORE advisors, they're a great resource to help companies work through their business planning needs. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Export Express and international trade loan. And the reason being, Export Express, we can do both term and lines of credit. So we can structure things very flexibly. And the international trade loan is purely a term financing. So when your financing need exceeds the $500,000 of an Export Express loan, that's when you would graduate into an international trade loan or potentially an export working capital. But for simplicity's sake, Export Express really is a combination of both export working capital and international trade. It can accomplish both types of financing, term or lines of credit, but just up to a maximum of $500,000. So on Export Express, it is a delegated loan program with the lenders. So what that means is that the lender can approve an Export Express loan on their own. They don't have to come back to SBA for a separate approval. They know the rules of the SBA. They're able to, take in the application, review it, do the underwriting, and approve it on their own under their own delegated authority. So the benefits obviously is the quick turnaround time, but as I mentioned, the flexibility of the product. You can obtain, maybe you need some working capital to support some of your export sales, but you also need some new equipment to support some larger orders that you've received. So the lender can make could make two loans, a line of credit available for working capital and a term loan that can be used for your equipment purchases. This year, fiscal year 23 through September 30th of 2023, SBA has no guarantee fees for loans under $500,000. So it's a great time for an Export Express loan. You would have no SBA related fees. The downside or the cons to this, I guess, would be there is a requirement that an export questionnaire be provided by the applicant, and we'll get into that. What does an export questionnaire cover? And this is really very simple. I call it kind of like a one-page business summary, not a business plan, more of a business summary. And it talks really about what specifically are you doing on the export side of things. So we want to know about what's the export activity, describe your product, your service. Is it a direct export or is it indirect export where you're selling to another US customer who's ultimately exporting your goods or services? What's the export experience of the business? Provide, what your historic sales have been, and then also a monthly projection of revenues over the next 12 months, just to understand what the company is projecting. Talk about which export markets are you selling to, and how the loan proceeds are going to help you to expand into these other markets. Again, just explaining the benefits of the loan, how it will be used, and how it's going to contribute to the company's export success. I think if you're working with a SCORE advisor, you're probably going to hit a little bit more on other areas here, maybe talking about, well, how do you sell internationally? Are you selling through distribution? Are you selling direct? Is it just purchase order based? So there's other things that you can add to this, and they may be questions that your lender will ask, but this is really what is necessary for the lender to be able to process an Export Express loan. And this here is just a sample of the questionnaire, and you can see it's just really a short answer type document. You don't have to use this particular document. You can just do a one-pager on your own. So I have a couple of loan discussions I wanted to hit, just because this Export Express program is really interesting because you see a lot of different types of transactions. And so this first one we're talking about, it's a family-owned company here in New England, husband and wife, and they've got some family connections in Germany. And they happen to sign a contract with a fairly large German media company to provide US documentary type work. Apparently in Europe, US documentaries are very popular, and it's positioned this company very well to be able to get some of that business. So for them, they had a need for an export working capital line of credit, which we did for $100,000. And they also needed some term financing to purchase some equipment that was related to the contract and helping to execute that contract. The reason they needed the export line of credit is because the German customer would provide this company with an advance payment. I don't remember if it was a 10 or 25% advance payment, but in return, the German customer wanted to have an advance payment guarantee. And the line of credit under the Export Express program can be used for the issuance of standby letters of credit as an advance payment guarantee. It's one of the real advantages of this program because it allows a company, let's just say, company received a $25,000 advance payment without an Export Express SBA guarantee. If you went to your bank and said, I need to have an advance payment guarantee for the foreign buyer, the bank would say, that's fine. Just give us the $25,000 that you receive in an advance payment. We'll lock that away in a control account, and then we'll issue the standby letter of credit. So now you've got no working capital benefit to that advance payment. SBA's requirement is that 25% of that advance payment would go into a control account, and the remaining 75% can be used for working capital. So it's really one of the benefits of the program that I feel is something that really does help a small business be more competitive. It puts them on kind of a level playing field with with some of their larger competitors. So this company, the outcome, of course, was we made these two loans, both Export Express. One was a line of credit, one was a term loan. They executed the contract. The export line was used for the standby letters of credit, plus some additional working capital for operating expenses related to the contract. And this company also did utilize a STEP grant program to attend an international trade show in Miami. And I think those are where they made some of these connections to some of the European buyers that they work with. The second loan discussion is, this is an interesting company. This is a woman-owned, again, sole proprietor business here in New England that is basically a wholesaler of lobster. They do some other seafood-related products, but it's mostly lobster that they export to Asia. So in this situation, the company was receiving more orders from its Asian customers, and the lobster suppliers here in New England required very short-term payment terms, so they had to be paid within 10 days. So there was a little bit of a gap that the company needed to fill. So having an export line of credit in place helped them to make the payment earlier to the suppliers, make the shipment, and then they would be paid based on their terms. I think their terms were net 60 or net 30, depending on the customer. One of the ways that they mitigated the risk of non-payment by the foreign customer was to engage in an export credit insurance policy that mitigated that non-payment risk basically through an insurance policy. And what it does is if a customer does not pay for the products that you shipped on open account terms, you can basically submit a claim to the insurance company and be paid 90 to 95% of the invoice amount. Just depends on the policy. So this is a way that the company utilized that export credit insurance that really helped them to sell more internationally, because now they could provide open account terms to these customers that they had been doing business with for many years. And that caused these customers to buy more. And this one also did utilize a STEP grant for some international trade show participation. So those are just a couple of examples of loans that we've done. I said we're going to go a little more detail into the International Trade Loan Program. Again, the reason I want to hit on this is because it does require an export business plan. And that, again, I have that on the con side of this particular program. But if you're looking to have a term loan to support your export business, you have to expect that your lender is going to want to know a little bit about what you're doing internationally so that they're comfortable with the overall risk of the business. So what does SBA require in an export business plan? I get that question a lot. And I would just say that these are kind of the minimum requirements that are in place. Like I said, with the export questionnaire for Export Express, I think you probably want to provide a little bit more detail, but I'll just go through these. You want to have a 12-month revenue projection, just showing what you're looking to sell over the next 12 months, and where are you going to sell? What countries are you going to be selling to? And also, of course, you want to talk about your product or service and why it's in demand internationally, and how do you sell? Is it through distribution? Is it direct? Those types of things. With the business plan, you do have to show how will the loan that you're obtaining through your lender, how is it going to help the business enter a new market or expand its existing markets, and also improves the company's overall competitive position. And by competitive position, we're talking about a lot of things. So it could be, a niche product, and you're different from your competition, which allows you to stand out and gives you a competitive advantage. Maybe the loan is going to help you to improve some costs. Maybe it's a piece of equipment that's going to make you more efficient. It's maybe supply chain related, and there's improvements in your supply chain or distribution improvements that could help reduce costs. So you just want to include kind of an explanation of how the loan is really going to help the company continue to export, expand exports, and improve its overall competitive position. And then if you're an indirect exporter, you would need to provide some documentation from your customer certifying that a portion of the goods or services that you sell to them is ultimately exported. But I think this is a really good use of a SCORE advisor to help with this export business plan. You always want to present your best case, strongest case to your lender. This slide just talks about the SBA guarantee fees we mentioned. Again, you can see for $500,000 or less, there's no fees. We've got reduced fees on loans between $500,000 and $1 million. So if you're looking at $1 million loan, it's about a 1% fee versus normally that's a 3.5% fee. So just now through September 30th, we've got this fee waiver in place for loans less than $500,000 and significantly discounted for loans under $1 million. I mentioned other areas for access to capital. So, maybe your business isn't, bank ready for a loan, and a micro loan might be the way to go. These are local lenders that provide microloans up to $50,000. You can see average loan size here in Connecticut is about $13,000. So these are small loans, and they can be used for startups, existing businesses. Again, these microloan organizations, they look at a loan just like a bank, but they understand that they're trying to support either a new business or an existing business that just needs a little bit of credit support. I list 3 of the micro lenders we have here in Connecticut. There's a couple that are out of state that are more that are also active here, but I just list the ones that I know are kind of have a brick and mortar here in Connecticut. And then there's a community advantage loan. These are loans up to $350,000, kind of like the microloan program, but just bigger. So this would fit the niche for a company that's looking for maybe more than $50,000, but less than $350,000. Might be a business that, again, isn't particularly bank ready and just needs a little bit more support. Community Investment Corporation here in Connecticut is a really good partner. And this goes for both, even if you're a company that's not exporting right now and it's just purely domestic financing that you need, they're a good partner. And Community Advantage can also be used to support exporters. So again, very flexible. So what do I need to apply for an SBA loan? It's really standard application materials for any type of commercial loan. I won't go through all of these, but it's going to be, SBA's got its own application form. There's going to be personal financial statements for the guarantors. So those are your individual financial information, the business financials, income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, tax returns, ownership structure, a debt schedule, any existing loans that you have, resumes for each principal and key management, and just general overview of the business. And as we talked about with Export Express, you would need to also have an export questionnaire, or with an international trade loan, you would need to have that export business plan. So this is more for some of the SCORE advisors. When's a good time to refer a client to an SBA export finance manager? I'm what I call the EFM. Established at least 1 year, could be a newer business if the owners or the personnel have clear demonstrated experience. Really, we're industry agnostic. Company has, again, they have export development financing needs, whether it be working capital or term financing, or maybe they're a good candidate for a step grant. Down the road, maybe they're going to need some financing. So that's a good conversation for me to have. Again, business type, for-profit business, sole proprietorships, partnerships, corps, doesn't matter. Companies that are looking to the international market to grow. And also companies that need to resolve some sort of international related issue. Could be questions about letters of credit or regulatory stuff or trade agreements. We talked about the Office of International Trade's hotline. You can reach out to me. We'll do our best to connect you with the right resource partner. In terms of local export assistance, there's lots of it. I just kind of list the key ones here, of course. Your SCORE business mentors. We talked about the SBA grant funding. We've got the contact information here. SBDC, Small Business Development Centers. There's Denise Whitford here in Connecticut. She focuses on export advising and is a great resource. The U.S. Commerce Department in their Export Assistance Center in Middletown. They've got some phenomenal programs to help identify customers overseas. help identify countries where your product is most likely to be successful. And then you've got the Export-Import Bank, and they've got the export credit insurance policies that we talked about that can help protect small businesses from non-payment by their overseas buyers. So this kind of sums everything up. Top 10 reasons why exporters use export products. We've talked about most of these. Again, right now, no guarantee fees on loans less than $500,000, reduced fees on loans under $1 million. STEP grant is a very big program for us. We get a lot of companies that utilize it. Export loans from the SBA, they're really specifically designed and customized for small businesses. We talked about the issuance of the standby letters of credit for advanced payment guarantees. I mean, that's something that really helps a company to compete when working internationally. Again, we can help companies with their export funding needs, issuance of the standby letters of credit, ability to extend payment terms to overseas customers. We talked about the wholesaler of lobsters having the export credit insurance in place that allowed them to provide open account terms to their overseas customers. Purchase order financing is another big reason companies utilize our financing. Basically, we fund against a purchase order to allow you to pay the operating expenses, purchase the inventory, build the product or service, and execute the contract. There's no US content rules. So even if you're importing stuff from all over the world, you're qualified for SBA. Take advantage of our export resource partners we talked about. There's just a vast array of resources. Feel free to reach out to me, your score advisor. We'll do our best to connect you with the appropriate resource. And then export finance manager, myself. We also have a lender relations specialist here in Connecticut, John Shu. He also serves as the district international trade officer. We can help make introductions to some of these resource partners. Or if you've got a question about a bank, if your bank is able to provide these export loans, reach out to us. We can give you some guidance on those things. And I think we'll leave it there based on time. This is my last slide, but I'd like to just include this. It's kind of, again, it's part of your business planning. These are some of the questions you want to be prepared for when talking to your bank. Again, I would recommend, kind of writing this out, and maybe it's a 2 or 3 page document that you can then utilize to build out a larger export business plan. But this kind of hits the who, what, when, where, why of your export business. And with that, I have my contact information, and there's a couple of upcoming events that we have, in-person events in April and May. In April, we're doing a Connecticut Food and Beverage Growth Summit. It's going to be in Middletown on April 26th. And this will be very interesting for small food and beverage type businesses that want to learn how to get their product into some distributors and wholesalers, learn about some alternative distribution channels, and also marketing of your food and beverage products through social media or direct to consumer. And then we're also going to have a financing panel for that one. And then in May 24th, details will be provided. I'll make sure I get this to the score advisors, but there's going to be an international trade finance panel. This will have some discussions about access to export financing to help increase sales. There'll be some discussion about credit insurance and getting paid, and just in general doing business internationally, and some things to think about and look out for. So with that, we can jump to the chat if
Yeah,
that's provide you some guidance.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Lots of good information there for everyone. We do have time for questions. We'll take as many as we can till the top of the hour. Just a reminder, if you have a question, please use the Q&A button and just type it in, and then we'll go from there. We do have one question in already, Joe, from Jarena. How do we apply for these loans? Can we take this community loan to buy a commercial building? I think it was when you were talking about the community
Advantage. Yes, I mean, you can, my suggestion there, if you're buying a building, would be to reach out to Community Investment Corporation, and they can counsel you, because they do anything from, like I said, micro, but they're also an SBA partner on our 504 program, which is specific to companies' purchases of real estate and fixed assets. So they would be a very good contact for you to kind of talk about your specific situation, what you're trying to accomplish, and the size of the loan, and they can help either work with you through your bank or introduce you to another bank. But they are a direct lender on the Community Advantage and Microloan. If your loan is probably above the 350, it would probably be a loan through your bank that your bank would coordinate with Community Investment to execute a 504 loan.
Okay. And we have a question from Kim. It's how can we get more information or follow up more on that Connecticut Food and Beverage Growth Summit that you've talked about there? Is there more information on that on the website, or where people go?
Not yet. We're just finalizing kind of the marketing materials. We're just about a month away, so I would say you'll see it. The SCORE folks will see it through the SBA press releases that are emailed out, but okay. I'll make sure I send you, Bob, a press release on it, and you can distribute it to your folks or put it in your website. But it'll be, I would think, within the next week or so, it will be widely distributed. The international trade event, that'll be probably another 3 or 4 weeks before we get that one.
Yeah. And will the details also be up on the SBA site as well, Joe?
Yeah, it should be on the Connecticut site. Yeah. Correct.
Okay, perfect. Again, if anyone has a question or would like Joe to go back to any of the slides, just please let us know. We have a few minutes here. We'll just maybe pause while people submit any last minute questions.
Yeah, I would just add, since we have a little bit of time here, just in terms of kind of the export financing, and one of the biggest needs is export working capital. Once you start doing business internationally, if you start providing payment terms and open account, now you're creating kind of a liquidity gap, right? You need to, you're waiting to get paid, whether it's 30 or 60 days. And that's, to me, the defining moment of when a company says, okay, now I really need to get some export financing because I got this gap. A lot of times as companies begin exporting, they do a lot of advance payment, or they get 50% down, 50% upon shipment, which again, very secure. I highly encourage that until you really get to know your overseas buyer and have a good relationship with them, because things happen, right? I mean, there's currency devaluations, there's political issues, and it could be completely unrelated to your business partner overseas, but it causes them to not be able to make that payment. So advance payment is great. If you're going to extend open account terms, highly encourage looking into export credit insurance. Just that insurance policy that will kick in for those situations where you don't get paid. And when you do go to your bank looking for some export working capital and you show them, look, I've got export credit insurance on my export receivables already, the bank is going to really look at your business and your management and say, you guys really are on top of things. You're doing everything possible to mitigate your payment risk. And in a lot of cases, by extending those terms to overseas companies that are protected with a credit insurance, you may find you'll do more business with them because now you've kind of become their bank by extending those payment terms. So they're able to buy more.
Yeah, excellent advice. We do have another question here from Mary. Does my product need to be made completely or partly in America to qualify for one of the loans or grants?
So for the loan, no. If there's, again, we go back to the definition of an export, and it's really a contract between a US company and a foreign buyer. So that can mean a lot of things, and you know, I'm happy to talk offline if you want to talk about your transaction specifically. So from a lending perspective in our loan program, that would be eligible. From a STEP grant perspective, I do believe they do, and each state's a little different. They have their own rules, but most do require a 51% US content rule. Keep in mind that profit margin, you know, whatever your operating expenses are here on this side, those all count towards US content. So even though maybe you're importing a significant piece of your product, you still could qualify as 51% because of, you know, those other US related costs and profit margin.
Okay, that's great. We don't have any further questions, so just a reminder to everyone that the webinar has been recorded and it will be up on our website within the next day or so. So if you want to go back to look at any of those resources or lists of great items that Joe put, that's the best way to do it. And our next live webinar will be next Friday, March 31st at noon. The topic is Connect More, Sell More Through the Neuroscience of Sales with Julie Anderson presenting. And again, more specifics on our website. And again, if you want to take advantage of the free individual counseling, whether it's for an export plan or other business-related issues, you can take advantage of that by using that yellow bit.ly link that you see on the screen or going to our website and just clicking on Request a Mentor. And if you do that, someone will be back to you within about 48 hours or less. You could please fill out your evaluation form at the end of this. It's very helpful for us going forward. And so on behalf of SCORE, thank you very much for all of you for attending today's live webinar. And a special thank you in closing to Joe for the great information and webinar that you provided today. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.